Yep. Look, one of the key things to think about with this project, the Peake Project in the Peake and Denison, is the number 28. 28 basement intersections have ever been drilled into our tenements of over 5,000 square k's. I'm Duncan Chessell, the Exploration Manager and CEO for Copper Search, ASX.code/CUS. And thanks very much, Nicole, and the organisers for having us come and present today at a fairly early stage for our company, having just listed last year. I've also been told not to talk about corporate things too much, and so I'm going to offer a translation for this slide. It means we've got about 2 years' worth of exploration funds and $8 million cash at bank to cover that. The Copper Search team, I think, is a really key strength of our company and the project. I mean, a good team in many ways finds the right project, the right commodity, being copper, in the right jurisdiction, and South Australia being a fantastic jurisdiction for that. And those combination of factors attracts the right money. We've certainly got a very experienced and well-credentialed board with, I think, collectively 5 takeovers for over $5 billion in our industry. So Tony Bell-Pirio, the standout there with 3 takeovers. Potentially this one's the 4th. Let's see how he goes on that. The exploration team as well, newly formed. I came into the company 5 months ago and started to pull together a team of people to take the project forward and to review the project in full, which we've done over the last couple of months. Theo Arvanis, geophysicist with over 25 years experience, ran the geophysics team for Rio Tinto's Worldwide Exploration Group. John Main, a technical advisor, 40 years in the industry, advises the board, and then a couple of other senior geologists, some familiar names there, Richard Hill with 27 years experience, and Stacey Curtis, a recent addition with 17. So, a fantastic team of people, and hopefully we'll be out there trying to make a new copper discovery in the Peake and Denison. But as Nicole pointed out to me, you set yourself up to find something else with a name like Copper Search. Let's see about that. See if this goes to this next one. Maybe go back one. Yep, so where our project lies is right up in the top northeast corner of the Gawler Craton, an area I think in many ways overlooked previously because the age of intrusions there was thought to be probably 50 million years too young, around the 15 compared to Prominent Hill, Olympic Dam and some of our other peers. So it hasn't seen perhaps the attention that some of the other areas in the Gawler Craton has seen, and I think Tony Bell-Pirio and a number of people sort of had hypothesised that potentially it was equivalent to the Cloncurry district in age and the potential for the Mount Isa domain to host IOCG mineralisation, and that's certainly what Metallica went out to have a look at a few years ago and started picking up some ground. So what I wanted to sort of talk a little bit more about those sorts of assertions was that, well, that was sort of a good theory for a while, and I guess again Metallica made that discovery earlier this year, just adjacent to our ground, and that was announced recently. They're still waiting on assay results, but obviously subject to a takeover bid. We'll see what happens with Metallica. I think Glenn's going to speak on that later on today if he's here. But certainly what we've done with the last 2 months is gone about, as I said, forming a team, pulling apart the whole project and taking a really deep dive into all of the historical information and coming up with, I think, around 20 potentially shallow IOCG targets, less than 500 metres deep, and about half a dozen targets that are deeper than 500 metres. And we're going to go through over the next couple of years and methodically validate and test through drilling and geophysics on those. We will be starting drilling Q1 next year. So just a little bit of evidence to back up some of those assertions. I think it's probably pretty important. This comes from Behetz and Umret et al., which suggested that the tectonic reconstructions of the Peake and Denison and the Noah domain, I guess that was all really controlled or driven by the collision of Laurentia to the east. Controlling this, where on the left-hand side of the page, you've got what we believe it was, and the Peake and Denison was adjacent to and part of potentially a little bit like we've almost collected a little bit of Queensland and dragged it across into South Australia. And certainly I think that's the case with the evidence from D Metallica's recent drilling, that's sort of further proven that that's possibly the case. The geochron ages and so on also match the Mount Isa and the Cloncurry domain with ages of mesoprosic magnetism around 1530. So again, not typically the right age for what IOCGs are typically age. The age of IOCGs in the Gawler Craton at 1590, but we think that this doesn't really matter, and that we're quite happy with the theory that there is potential for IOCGs up in the Peake and Denison. I guess underexplored is sort of an understatement. There's only, as I said, 28 drill holes into basement in our tenements. That's about roughly one drill hole per 200 square kilometres, very few soil samples, and overall a very underexplored and not particularly well understood in terms of the basin. We've been going through and doing a near-miss analysis of all the historical drill core, and we're sort of nearly at the end of that, sort of a bit of a near-miss analysis. As I said, very large exploration space. A lot of the previous exploration, or the drill holes that were actually drilled in our area, were for uranium and diamond exploration as well. So what we needed to do with such a large search space is to narrow the focus, and so the approach we took was doing a litho-structural analysis, and we were fortunate that the 2019 SA government-funded Gawler Craton, or the GCAS survey, sort of the inspiration of Ted Tyne, was able to give us the data set that we're able to do a much better litho-structural analysis, and working with PGN Geoscience was a really good map has been produced. We identified 73 intrusions, and I think this will be sort of a basis for us to sort of test and validate some of the conclusions of this work, but certainly the structural architecture to allow the emplacement of IOCGs is present, and the lithological factors present are quite favourable. We identified 7 different deformation events from the Paleoproterozoic through to the Cambrian, and our focus is really on those Mesoproterozoic, that 1530 age, D3, D4 zones, where we were focusing our exploration efforts, and certainly that's where we thought that's the best place to start. We've gone through and ranked all of our targets, and we're using the proximity to the right age structures as our primary, one of our primary weightings on our ranking score, and we've gone through then sort of looking at the magnetic anomalism, gravity and IP where we can. So we're actually at the moment conducting some IP surveys over some targets that we can use IP on. A lot of the area has bulldog shale to the eastern side of our tenements, and the IP is ineffective, but certainly some areas we are able to use IP and help validate some of our targets as well. We also then went through the process and ranked, weighted all of our targets according to those factors, and then sort of applied a depth factor as well, which would imply it's more expensive and more difficult logistics to drill those deeper holes. But what we did is, instead of just saying, well, what's our best target on our tenements, we wanted to rank our targets against known examples of IOCGs. So we've sort of modelled up what Ernest Henry looks like, and we've said, well, that's 100%. How does ours compare to that? And we've, again, by using the different weighted scoring system to give us a score out of 100% for our targets. We've also started modelling up D Metallica's targets as well, because and we sort of feel that some of our targets actually rank equal to some of those intersections that D Metallica have made just recently. So that's very encouraging for us, that we feel like we've got like-for-like anomalism to some of D Metallica's recent drill targets. Success. I suppose just to sort of really sum up, we're at a fairly early stage with copper search. We are probably just about a year into the project. I only finished a very detailed review of this particular part of our company, the Peake and Denison project, the Peake Project, a couple of months ago, and just finishing off some gravity infill surveys right now with Daesh up there. And we've just in the middle of a heritage survey, which I came back from last night, which is clearing all of the southern half of our targets at the moment. So we're pretty keen to get back out in the paddock and start drilling next quarter. And we have got a lot of targets, and we think we've got a revised exploration strategy for that region, but obviously haven't drilled any of them yet, and I guess proof will be in the pudding. Thanks very much.